Hi,
How
how
are
are
you?
you? Long time no talk.
I know. Gosh, it's been a year. It's just so many
Lots been
transitions,
happening.
a lot. Yeah, and still happening,
Still
especially in the
happening,
parent world. We're all feeling that big shift.
for sure.
Virtual school.
Yeah, yeah, with the parent and the teacher.
Yes, yes. And boy, do you give a lot more credit to the teachers. I actually did a conversation with Vicki Hannah Lynn, who you're aware of, about that topic. Like, how do we handle that as stress as parents? So, welcome, Facebook world, friends, family, supporters, Sue's friends. We are live with Sue Decaro, who is a parent coach and expert in the field who has done a few events with our foundation, Elsa, and we are so grateful. Today, we're covering empowered parenting. Sue, can you give us a short description about you, your background, and why you got into helping us parents?
A short description, huh?
I know.
Um, basically, I am a worldwide life and parent coach and an educator, and I do a lot of corporate speaking as well to try to bring more conscious and mindful awareness to everyone on this planet. Because, of course, the next generation is going to benefit as we all do that and live in this particular way. I got into this field mainly from my own parenting journey, which was the rockiest road you could imagine, full of chaos every day. And
Mm.
it led me to professionals and experts and people trying to help me do a better job with my children, my oldest being my greatest awakener.
Mm.
Back then, we called her challenging. Now we call them
Mhm.
spirited, which is such a beautiful way to look at our children. They have spirits and perhaps just a little different from another child we have in our family. But anyway, she really helped me learn and grow in my own parenting. And in the end, I went back to school for a master's level certification in parent coaching to really support parents all over the world who may have struggles less than mine, maybe more than mine, maybe about the same, but to bring hope, to teach, to help support and move forward. So we're raising the next generation with kindness and compassion and feeling empowered and empowering them as well.
Mm. It's so needed. When I became a parent, I the first book I read was Conscious Parenting. And that helps your perspective not just obviously it's not about parenting, it's about every relationship you have in your life. And when you become a parent and you start becoming aware of this, you understand that it's on the parent. So the children
Right.
are reflecting the ego self, our neglect to really see what's happening. They don't know how to express themselves. So there's things that we can do, sometimes super simple, that can help create this empowered state in parenting that doesn't involve yelling and threatening. And it ends up being more time saving. So I think a
Yeah,
lot of us just get tired.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I love what you said. Parenting is truly about us as the parent. It's not about the child in front of us. It's not about fixing the child. Many people come to me and say, and they'll say, I need help. My child doesn't listen. It's not really about your child's ears. It's about ways we communicate and the things that we do. So really, when you look at parenting, and I know many parents listening to this might be like, wait, what? But when you look at parenting, it's how we show up. It's how we see each child in front of us and show up for that child, as well as how well we clean out our baggage and really attach to what feels important for us and to us in moving forward to be the best parent we can be and to raise the children in front of us in a way in which we feel good about. So
Mm,
I think the first thing about empowerment and being an empowered parent is to really have the belief that you're capable of leading and ushering and guiding and teaching the
mm,
children in front of you. And that occurs from the inside out. It's not an outside job. It's not reading 1,000 different books that tell you 1,000 different things, but it's about really taking the time to look within and see what your conditioning looks like, what your cultural patterns, that you've been taught to believe, and what I like to call the platter we've been fed. We've all been fed a platter, whether it's society, our family, or the culture you might belong to, and to dissect and discern how this pattern fits in, how this
mm,
cycle fits into your life, so that you can be aware of what you're doing and not just repeat things that don't speak to you. That's the first
mm,
step in empowerment, is
Mm,
understand you. Does that
mm.
make sense?
It does. And you have the capability of changing it and that our children will respond to that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Everything we do when we show up for our children affects our children. We have
Mm,
an enormous impact on our children by our behaviors, our nonverbals, the messages we bring, the way we take the patterns that we've been taught and repeat them. And so, again, this is where we must look at ourselves and see how we're showing up. And this is where, as I mentioned, my greatest awakener, this is where our awakeners, the children in our family, teach us and help and guide us with their responses to our behavior.
mm,
So when you show
mm,
up with, with, let's say, stressful energy. Okay, let's take COVID, for example. And,
mm,
you're stressed about the holidays, which, I certainly understand. And you're stressed about what that looks like and how you're going to keep the virus out of your house. When you
mm,
show up to your children with the stress, they feel it. They're
mhm,
little energy grabbers or absorbers or like sponges. So whatever energy you have that you're showing up with, that's the
mm,
energy they're taking on.
mhm,
So this is where, again, you have to come to yourself. You have to work with yourself, talk with yourself to
mm,
help yourself get to a grounded place that
mm,
you can come to your children. And it may mean taking a time out and go and take a long shower while you decompress.
mm. Oprah has a saying that's check your energy at the door, and I love it. The same thing applies with our kids. They do pick it
Right.
up on all of the subtleties. So I like to. Recently, I came across a friend who said this is compassion versus empathy. And I follow astrology. I think it's fun. I have an Aries child who's probably similar to your daughter and very much an empowered child. And you don't want to kill that light. And so I really had to deep dive into how do I help keep him bright and still have structure and balance. And as me as an empath, I hate displeasing people. So you get into this fear ego state with your children and coercing and of course I'm saying that right and manipulating them and trying to find out bribery to get them to what you do to get them to do what you want. So the way that I was described this to me was empowered parenting. So compassion looks like this. Like we can have compassion for our children with our chest out and feel for them and direct them versus empathy where you're like this and absorbing it. So stepping into that empowered place with compassion for them and knowing that you have a plan. So for my child Atlas, I do options. That really, really helps. But you take a little bit of time ahead. So rather than swiping a credit card and owing debt later, where you just yell at your kids to do something, I take the time then. That's helped me a lot to direct my already empowered child to keep that.
Right. Right. And you're empowering him by what you bring to the table too. And that's another piece of empowered parenting is that we also are empowering our children by bringing conscious awareness to who the child is, right?
Mhm.
And what the child needs. So, some children are pleasers, some children are,
Mhm.
very um uh what's the word I'm looking for? One might say stubborn or fixed in their ways.
Independent.
And independent.
Yeah.
And, so it's really working with the child you have. It's seeing the child in front of you. And like you beautifully said, leaving your energy at the door. You have to, it's not so easy to just dump your energy as you come through the door. So you have to actually work through that to leave that energy somewhere else or work through it so that you can show up as a present human being for your children. And
Mhm.
when you're fully present, you're able to listen to the child in front of you as they share whatever it is they're sharing. They want something and you don't necessarily want them to have it, but perhaps sitting and listening will demonstrate your compassion, your empathy, your understanding. You're hearing your child's need. And
Mm.
every single one of our kids, as well as all of us adults, needs to be heard, seen, and valued. And
Mhm.
so when you're silent and you just listen and you don't listen to respond, right, with your, three options immediately, but you're listening to hear your child and to absorb whatever it is they're saying and empathize. I understand how much you really want this. I hear you. I get it. That makes a big difference in empowering the child to share
Mm.
and to feel and to understand that their views and their thoughts are, are valued or considered. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean we give in to everything our children discuss and ask for, but instead of coercion, we can, or manipulation, then we can have a conversation. So I believe very much in the collaborative process with our children, and you're
Mhm.
collaborating with the three options. By
Mhm.
offering three options, it's a collaboration. Let's talk about these three options. Tell me which, feels right for you. And when we include our children in decision making and discussions and problem solving, they feel much more of a buy-in and valued. And
Mhm.
that is where empowerment goes a long way. If you're
Mhm.
constantly dictating and telling your children, get off the internet, you've been on too long, you can only have 5 minutes or
Mhm.
whatever, instead of, I see we have a situation here where technology has taken over. Let's sit down and talk about what that looks like together and see if we can come up with a plan. I
Mhm.
guarantee your kids are going to have more of a buy-in than they might have with the dictatorship.
Mhm. It's treat them how you'd want to be treated. What
Absolutely.
you
And treat
teach
them
them.
how you wanted to be treated when you were a child.
Mhm. Mhm. And what we do, they repeat. So if we're threatening, if
Right.
we use threatening to get them to do something, they end up returning that either to us or to other people, or they allow that behavior when they're an adult. I've never personally
Absolutely.
spanked my children ever. I've wanted to, but I never have. And I have gotten just to that point where I do two option. I don't do three because my kids are too young. I think they get confused. But that's really changed my entire world, is modeling what I want them to be treated like when they're an adult, what I want to be treated like, and how I want them to learn skills. So
Mhm.
giving options and empowerment. So over our conversation, I have a few questions I'm going to ask you specifically about empowered parenting.
Mhm.
And at the end of this, for everyone who's watching, I know we just dived in because I just love talking with Sue, and I'm just really
Thank you.
passionate about this. There's Q&A. So as we're going, guys, if you're watching this, please just pop some questions in if you have something specific for her. She's great at it.
Yes.
So what are some signs that you're not coming from a place of empowerment with your children, both with you, the parent, and what are some signs that you can see in the kids?
Well, I think your children will be your signs. So, I think first what you might see or feel in yourself is a lack of conviction, a lack of belief, a lack of consistency,
Mm,
kind of feel like wishy-washy, not really sure where to go, and not feeling like you're holding any of the boundaries you might set. And I
mm,
don't believe, we need to have a ton of boundaries, but if you have a boundary, believing that it's important and holding it shows you're empowered to make these decisions and you're confident in them. And
mm,
so, that's the first thing. And I think the second part of this is our children's behavior. So,
mm,
the children's behavior is a form of communication. And even when it comes to looking at our empowerment and how we show up for them and our belief in ourselves, they will help us and guide us by the pushback or
mm,
the opposite of that, the collaboration, the forward movement, the feeling of value and empowerment for the child. That shows you. So
mm,
I think our measure, if we could call it that, is often based on our children because,
mm,
again, they're holding up the mirror to show us our developed selves, our undeveloped selves, where we need to work a little harder. And
mm,
so when you're wishy-washy and your child steps all over that and knows, you obviously aren't coming from a place of belief and empowerment in yourself.
mm,
And
mm,
so that these are the places to really watch. And just to share a very quick story that I think might resonate with people. When my oldest was about 13, her dad and I were divorced, and she, can't believe I'm sharing this story, but anyway, she called her dad on the phone, wanted to have a sleepover, and he said no. She took the phone upstairs into her bedroom, closed the door, and I heard a whole lot of screaming and crying going on. And and he was doing the best he can. Let me just say that in this moment. And she came down and she said, "That worked." Those were her exact words. Well, that worked. And her face was as if she had never cried. So it was like an acting job that worked because, and again, I'm not saying this to bash, my ex-husband. We have a great relationship and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing this story, but the point of it is there was no empowered parenting in that moment
mm,
because we didn't believe and stick with what we believed
Mm,
and hold to it.
mm,
We let the child run the show.
mhm,
So by the child saying, well, that worked, they're actually reinforcing their own behavior and
mm,
saying, well, now I know how to get what I want, and this is how. So,
mhm.
yes, we've empowered them, but not in a way that's going to work for anyone in the household, right?
Right, right. I like to like really pin down. So sometimes this shows up as yelling. When you're in yelling physically, you are not empowered. And that's what you're talking about is mean what you say and follow up with what you say. And sometimes as a parent, we get caught up. I'm especially guilty as this, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, where I just say no or I answer something. And we didn't really check in with ourselves if I should have said no to my kid. And he, my boys are probably really aware that like, hey, this is really something that I should be able to do. So that's the renegotiation part where I'll stop, I'll check myself, I get down on their level, I look them in the eye and say, hey, I wasn't connected, and I like to renegotiate that. So
Hmm.
they still know you mean what you say. So sometimes I'll say you're going to have this punishment, you don't follow through. That's another sign you're not really coming from an empowered parenting place.
Right. Right. And beautiful how you um, renegotiate. I love that because it doesn't look like, we're wimpy one minute we feel this way and the next minute we feel that way. It's
Mm,
really showing the child that sometimes we're not as attentive as we'd like to be. And
mhm,
therefore, we need to talk about this again.
mhm,
And I think one of the key ingredients in doing this and feeling empowered is pausing
mhm,
and silence. Two things.
mhm,
Those can be your greatest sources of
mhm,
forward motion. If you take nothing away today from this discussion, if you can just pause a little bit, because we are trained in our society, in our world, to respond so quickly. Everything, a text message, you don't get an answer. Why haven't they answered me? Our
mhm,
kids are acting that way too.
mhm,
So let's actually renegotiate that with
mhm,
ourselves and know that we do not have to respond unless somebody, it's a crisis. We don't have to respond in that moment. And, I still say to my children, let me think about that. And they're in their 20s because I know that I want to process my answers and, and be sure that I am checked in and that I'm speaking from a place of presence and
mhm,
thoughtfulness and
mhm,
mindfulness and consciousness and all of those things. So,
mhm,
first pause and know that it is okay. The first time you do it, your kids may be like, what? Why can't I get an answer now? Because
mhm,
they may not be used to that. So, you're going to have to retrain the people in your family that pausing is a part of life and waiting for a response is not a bad thing. Because if they want it now, we can give them a no. If they want us to be thoughtful, then we need time.
mhm. Help
So,
teach patience too. Mm.
lots of patience. Yes. Something that I wish was my middle name because I feel like then it would be closer to my heart. But yeah, patience is absolutely something that comes with the silence and the
Yeah.
pause. And silence is a chance to truly listen.
Mm,
So we used to say at the dinner table when my kids were young, let's listen to hear, not to respond. And
mm,
so when your child asks something, oftentimes,
mm,
and I know my kids used to ask, like they come with these really convoluted plans and ask if they could go somewhere. And the plan sounded like something that no other parent would say yes, but I didn't know that. And so again, listening with silence and presence at the full picture before we respond, like, are you kidding me? Who else's parent is
mm,
allowing this? Then it
mm,
allows it to settle, right? And it
mm,
allows the child to feel heard and
mm,
valued. And
mm.
that is really
We
important.
all want.
We all want,
That's
every
what we
single
all
one
want.
of us.
Mhm,
And we deserve it. Just by
mhm.
being born, by being human beings on this earth, we all deserve to be seen, heard, and valued.
We do. We do. And it helps tremendously when you shift that with your children.
Absolutely.
I think another sign of not being in an empowered parenting is your kids' responses, like what you're talking about. So if you're noticing your children when you say no or yes to something and they have a habit of pushing you and pushing you and pushing you, they probably are used to you not being in an empowered state. So if your kids are yelling, if you're yelling, those kind of physical responses in your home. One thing, like when my kids come in, they're centered 15 minutes after school. That teaches them so much, and it sets the stage for an easy evening. So there are certain specific things that you can do, and it doesn't matter what the child's age is, to help set that stage and help set that intention for true connection, because that's really what they're trying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you mentioned something very important. The first 15 minutes that we are re-engaging, whatever that
Mhm.
looks like today. But re-entry into the home, or if you work in the home and you come out of your office and, really are coming into family time, the
Mhm.
first 15 minutes is most important in terms of
Mhm.
connecting. It's an opportunity to sit with presence and really gain insight into your child's day, where they are, maybe share yourself. But it's an opportunity for deep connections if we allow ourselves to be fully present. They need
Mhm.
that from us. They need that connection piece before going about the evening and feeling like we're ships passing in the night. So
Mhm.
I encourage parents, again, 10 to 15 minutes. It's
Mhm.
not super hard if you break it down to just that small quantity of time, and put your cell phone down, put the mail down, put everything down, and
Mhm.
just sit with your child or children and
Set your
be.
alarm on your phone.
Yeah,
Set your alarm
yeah,
on your phone for every
right.
day for the same time. This is my 15 minutes with my child, because we get so caught up. Oh, dinner and unpack and whatever it might be. Yeah.
Dinner can wait 15 minutes. Perhaps once
Mhm.
you do this, your children will be more apt to want to engage and support and help you with dinner or anything else.
Yeah.
Once you have that connection piece, it's a super important part of our day that
Mhm.
we don't often take the time to focus on.
Mhm.
So, I think that that piece, as well as again what we talked about before, is modeling how important it is to be
Mhm.
together, to have that time, to spend time one on one or as a group, with your kids if you have more than one, and really
Mhm.
listen and dialogue and communicate.
Mhm. And alone time with each child. That's really
Always great.
important. I make sure to have alone time with each child. It's made a big difference. Atlas used to have a lot of behavioral problems, right? It was Atlas. And then I learned and was able to pick up how I was unconsciously parenting. And when I took that time, and in general in life, I'm a big proponent and teacher of setting the intention. Every
Mhm.
time you shift your job or shift what you're doing, stop for a minute and set the intention. When you set the intention, there's actually scientific studies behind this, that you change and can help project and create what's about to happen. So set the intention with your children is really, really powerful practice.
And, and I think that that's something you can also set your alarm for before reentry,
Mhm.
because then you're clearing space for that
Mhm.
intention to take shape. And
Mhm.
so it can be something that you do on your own in just preparing. It's like
Mm.
driving home from work, if we do that anymore, where you have that downtime to clear out the clutter and step into a new world,
Mhm.
which is the world of family and children. They don't want us coming in with all our baggage from our office or whatever it is we do. They want us fully present to be able to, again, see, hear, and value what they have to say and what their experiences have been. The more we do this, the more our children are apt to share with us. The more we actually tune in and listen, fully present, again, no distractions, the more we will learn about the child's world. And we're
Mhm.
empowering them to feel comfortable in sharing with us. And that's,
Mhm.
I'm going to use these words even though I don't like them. That's the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, we want our children to be able to share all of their world, all of their life, right?
Mhm.
Without
Make
us,
it easier then.
it's easier. They
It gets
feel like
easier.
we're
Parenting
heard.
gets easier. Yeah. It's taking that credit card. So if you guys aren't doing the work now, it's debt later. Like your
Right.
kids are going to have issues when they're older. You guys are going to continuously have dysfunction. So instead of swiping the credit card, take the time now. Invest now in your children, and you create a system that is easier. Parenting is easier, it's healthier, and it works out for everyone. Yeah.
And I think one of the other things is, I hate to use this coined phrase, but be the change. If you see things in your children that you do not like, I hear parents say, my kids never listen. What are you doing? How are you showing up to listen to them? My kids used
Mm.
to constantly come in and interrupt me while I was working. I've worked from home for many, many years. and I'd be in the middle of like typing this thought that, I didn't want to lose. So instead of saying, what, and just trying to pretend that I was listening, I would say, what you have to say is really valuable. If you just let me finish this thought, then I can give you my full attention. And so just as we'd want them to say to us, you need to put your modeling hat on and be everything it is that you want to see in them. If you want to see them share with you, then you show up present for them, because that's modeling the open space to have a conversation. So it's really looking at what you see in your home, making a list of what may feel good and maybe what doesn't, and look at what
Mhm.
doesn't and think about yourself.
Mm.
How do I show
How are
up
you?
this way? What do I do at
Mm.
this time? How can I engage in a different way to model something different for my kids? Children do not want to hear what we have to say. They want to watch what we do. In the olden
Mhm.
days, my era of growing up, it was, do as I say. I can still hear those words.
I
Do as I
know, I
say,
hate
not as
that
I do, right?
because they
And
said so.
my mother,
Uh,
don't smoke, as she's standing there smoking. You should never smoke. Okay.
uh-huh.
Of course, then I
Doesn't work.
smoked. Right.
Yeah. Doesn't
So
work.
I think that it's really important to embody all the things that you want to see in your children. If you want
Mhm.
them to be neat, if you want them to put their things away, do you put yours away? If you want them to make their bed in the morning, do you make yours? If you
Mhm.
want them to eat healthy foods, do you have a snack cabinet like high above with all your junk in it that you think you're hiding? You're not.
Mm.
You're not. Your
I
kids
know.
know. They know.
We have yeah, just the other day Atlas said to me, "Mommy, why do we always rush to school?" Because in
Great
my mind,
question.
I was letting him sleep later, and then I would rush him out the door. And it's a 10-minute change, and now he's learned to be on time with ease. He gets to play. Yes, he has a little bit less sleep, but they will say to us, and if we're willing to take notice. So I have a practice, I call it my money date calendar. And on my money date calendar, once a week, I write my goals. And I have family goals, and then I write the things that I've accomplished. Like my kids are potty trained. I have a 3-year-old. Like when that happened, it was a huge deal. Or sleeping through the night. So as a family, you're always evolving. There's a practice that we do every Friday: 3 things that went good for you, 1 thing that didn't. What's your goal for next week? So how can you engage with your children to consistently have goals for yourself and with them? It's a practice of evolution and mindfulness to the collective growth and individual growth. At least that's really helped for me.
Absolutely. That's such a beautiful way to not only move forward for yourself, but with them at such young ages. I mean, imagine
Mhm.
them as they go into their teens, how empowered they will be to be able
Mhm.
to set goals for themselves when, many children don't learn anything about goals. They don't know what goal setting is or accomplishments look like. I always
Mhm.
encourage parents to celebrate. And so, it sounds like your forms of celebration are, on your calendar. And the reason is, let's face it, this is one of the hardest things we're ever going to have to do.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
COVID's up there, but I think parenting every single day is
Parenting.
one of the hardest things that we'll ever have to
Yeah.
do. And so it's really important to be gentle and kind with yourself. And when you feel that you've done something that feels empowering and perhaps empowers the child,
Mhm.
celebrate. Like, I'm a big fan of lighting candles, but we all have our own practice. It doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a bottle of wine or go out for dinner, which most of us aren't doing, but something little. Go
Mhm.
outside, pick a flower, something that honors your movement, your activity, your growth. And
Dance party. That's what
I
we do.
think on the flip side, it's also not about, I encourage this with my clients all the time. And oftentimes I'm actually lighting a candle for them or with them because I'm excited for their growth as well. But I think the
Mhm.
other piece of this is we tend to judge ourselves. I mean, we live in a world of judgment, and it's easy to show up and judge and say, oh, I yelled at my child. And
Mhm.
I encourage parents to take every moment as a new moment, because
Mhm.
each moment is an empowering moment. Each moment is separate from the last. If you yelled at your kids in the last moment, repair it by
Mhm.
taking ownership for it and
Mhm.
modeling to them how in life we make mistakes, and part of mistake making is to own it and then bring back that reconnection or repair, as Dan Siegel likes to call it, so that we can move forward in a different way. Our kids
Mm,
appreciate that, and it says so much to them from a modeling standpoint. And then let it
mm,
go and move on.
mm,
So
mm,
every day, every moment of every day is new. And we
mm.
can't beat ourselves up for the last minute. All we can do is do a better job in the next one and learn and grow from everything that happens, just like our children need to do with their mistakes and their, situations that occur. None of us are
It's like
perfect.
sometimes there's a light switched. I've had stories of my life that I've held on to forever that were self-sabotaging, and I was like, "Oh, that exists. Now it's over." And it's your kids can heal that fast. So if you were a yelling mommy before and you don't want to be a yelling mommy now, they can heal too with you that quick as you shift it. So it's
Yeah.
it's definitely a lot of forgiveness for yourself and forgiveness for them. So we've talked about what it looks like. We've talked about some ways to do it. The long-term effects we touched on a little bit, like how they grow up, how they end up returning, how they end up behaving, or what they end up accepting. And then it's acting now rather than later. I think we touched on as well. Like parenting becomes easier now. Like you just take the
Yeah.
time.
There's no time like the present. I mean, what are we waiting for? We're home with our kids. We might as well do something different to encourage everybody to grow in a more conscious, empowered, mindful way.
I think the overall of this, like as a really busy parent, is time really when you're putting these steps into place, like the 15 minutes before, slowing down, checking in. I say, I'm going to meditate on that first before answering. I don't always do this. Like that's a practice I'm working on. You really do get more time later. So it really
For
is that
sure.
long term effect
I,
of it.
I think to make any change, the energy and the time is more upfront.
Mhm.
But on the flip side, if you're yelling at your children and you're not getting the results that you're looking for,
Mm,
the energy that you put in to shift and do something different is really going to be less energy from the standpoint of yelling takes a lot out of us. It's exhausting.
mm,
So yes, it's a new practice. New practices take a little more commitment and energy for us to focus on, but
mm.
we're raising adults. I mean, we're raising adults. And so to be the best that you can be and shine your light and offer them the stage and the environment for each one of your kids to shine their own light brightly in a way that serves them. This is again all about empowerment.
Mm,
That is going to benefit them in the long run, no matter what age they are. So you have a 3 and 5 year old. If you're listening and your kids are in their teens, my kids are in their 20s. I still work on empowering ways to be with them or be here for them, and all of the things that we're talking about, try to model for them. Some
mm,
moments are great. And, I will be very honest. I'm human too. I
mm.
make mistakes, but I
Mhm,
repair all the
mhm.
time.
That's so key. That's what it's all about. And they learn that too.
Mhm.
Sue, it's wonderful as always. I have some more questions. I know we're at our 40-minute mark. We talked about 45 minutes on to set the stage. There is no Q&A or questions. I'm sure some will pop up later. I always get after we have calls all the things that people
Questions.
think
Yeah.
about. Yeah. Um, so anybody has any questions later, send them in. I would like to end on I mean, we have Christmas coming and there's COVID and current time struggles. Is there any like thoughts to that
Mm.
to send love to parents?
I yes, I somebody very wise, a good friend of mine, right before I traveled back to Pennsylvania from South Carolina to be with my family, which isn't really happening.
Mhm,
This friend said, "This is a new year. It's a different type of year, and it's a Thanksgiving." Right? Because we don't want to assume that next year is going to be the same way. We don't want to, we don't live in the future. We're not going to project what the future might be. But this Thanksgiving is going to be different. And so is this Christmas. And
mhm,
no matter what your practices are, and how safe, you are from a scale of 1 to 10, or how cautious, it's really important to create new memories. And,
mhm,
I don't want to call them new traditions because we don't want to take all the old traditions and throw them out and create something new, but let's be creative. So, this is again, empower your children to be part of the conversation.
mhm,
So, this year with COVID, we're not going to travel to, Granny's house or Annie, whatever's. So, let's talk about what we can do differently,
mhm,
and let's make it special in a different way. And
mhm,
if you come to it without the fear, the energy of, you know, woe is me and woe is my family and this is horrible and I can't believe it and all of these things and the disappointment that we might have as parents. If you come without that, if you journal and let that all go and you show up again with, like you said, drop your energy at the door and bring the positive focus to what is. This is what is. We can't change it. It's not going to change overnight. Thanksgiving, I'm now making Thanksgiving. I've never had Thanksgiving at home. So, it's different. And this morning, turkeys were all sold out. I'm like, wait, how can that be? It's like, I need a turkey. So, it's just finding new ways to bring comfort and joy. I mean, that's what it is, right? The holidays are about comfort and joy and being together
Gratitude.
and gratitude. And
Thank
I
you.
encourage parents to bring that practice into their holiday season, much more gratitude. If you have your health, that's huge, right? That's huge. So perspective taking too is an enormous opportunity here because there's a
Right.
lot of people that are dying. There's a lot of people that are ill. I personally have known people that have passed away from COVID, and I have known, family members that have it or have
Mm,
had it.
mm. Yeah, it's a pretty big deal for many. Yeah.
Yeah. And make it something special.
Mm.
We can do it if we set our hearts on it.
Mm.
So let the disappointment go. It is what it is. And sometimes we have to live in what the moment is showing us and offering to us and see what we can learn from it.
My family started doing weekly Zoom calls,
Mhm.
and a lot of us didn't even talk nearly as much as they are having the Zoom calls. So there's fun and creative ways, and a chance to play games with your kids, like get away from the TVs and come up with ideas and painting and drawing or whatever it is that might suit. And it's an
Yeah.
opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
Deeper connections can be formed during this time
Mm.
and just in a new way. So absolutely, we do Zoom cocktail hours.
Mm.
But and a lot of things like that. And people are playing trivia
Yeah.
on Zoom calls. And so you can set up your holiday season scheduling these so that you can be with family and you can even eat with family on Zoom.
Mm.
It is different
Yeah. But I think that as well with Christmas and just being in the state of gratitude and mindfulness and really it's centering and taking that moment to connect will do a lot for our future.
for sure. For sure.
Mhm.
Connection is key.
Thank you so much, Sue, and thank you everyone who turned in. I'm going to turn this into a YouTube later and share it. So if you guys have questions for her, please reach out. How can they find you? I know you have a group. You have a new program coming out. Tell us about it.
So I have a group called Conscious Parents Thriving Kids on Facebook, free, lots of support, lots of people from all over the world. And I also have a podcast, Conscious Parents Thriving Kids. Something about the name. And you can find me on suedecaro.com. So just my name. And I have two online programs right now with more to come because I do these programs typically, in person. I'm recreating them to be more of an online transformational process for you all so that you can learn, grow, and move forward in a different way. The first is transcending our triggers, finding our rhythm.
Mm,
Really powerful. And
mm,
the second is raising respectful listeners. And
mm.
again, as you've heard from
Woo.
today, that's really about us. So
Mm,
you'll learn more about how you can be a respectful listener in order to encourage your children
mm.
to be. So there are workbooks that go along with both of these that help us to really process and think and reflect on all the questions that come up during the online process.
And where do they find that? That's at your
That's
on
on my
college
website
website.
on
Okay.
courses. Yep, suedecaro.com. You'll see courses in the menu bar and yeah, and they're on sale now. So, and it's not a lengthy, 4-hour process. There's not a zillion modules. It's one module, one workbook, maybe an hour and a half of your time to really learn some new and important ideas and tools that you can use in your parenting process.
Huge shifts, guys. Huge shifts from small, tiny little tweaks. And like she
Right.
said, you do not have to do 4 weeks or 8 months of a training to just small things. Like for me, it was just giving an option and it utterly changed my child's response. So I'm gonna get your information. I'll put it into the comments later. And if there's anything else you can think of, throw in those comments. You do private coaching still.
I do one-on-one private
Okay,
coaching, group coaching. Yep, all of that, all over the world. So wherever you're from,
great.
I welcome you. And
Thank you.
I'd love to support you. This is my passion, is to really help people feel empowered and feel confident and believe in themselves as they also believe in the little ones in front of them and raise them in a different way.
Mm, it's so needed.
So
So,
needed
so needed.
now more than ever.
Yeah. And right now is a perfect time.
That's right. Thank you so much for
Thank
having me. I
you.
appreciate it. It's always great to see you and speak with you. It's been
It's
fun.
great to see you too. We'll schedule another one soon. Thank you so
Sounds
much for your
good.
time, Sue.
Sure.
Appreciate
Absolutely.
you.
Take care, everyone.
Take
Happy
care.
holidays.